Hi, everybody. This is Samita Nandi from the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies. We're very excited to have author Ellis Cashmore for his brand new book release, which is Celebrity Culture. It is in its third edition, and I'm so excited to have Ellis Cashmore with us today, all the way from the UK. Ellis, can you introduce yourself and which city are you speaking from?
I'm talking to you from Birmingham in the English Midlands, Samita. And if you're excited, I'm super excited because this is the first time I've been on your show or been interviewed by you. So I hope you're going to be easy on me today.
Oh, it's going to be very easy. And I have so many questions and really proud of your book. And what I'm going to do is have your book right here.
Okay.
It looks so beautiful. What a fantastic cover. And we were just talking about the cover. Can you tell us how did you come about this cover and how do you compare the book cover with the cover of the previous editions?
Well, it's Lizzo, of course. And I saw the image from her at the Brit Awards earlier this year, just a few months ago. And that really caught my eye. And of course, there's a lot about Lizzo in the book, as you know. So I immediately got in touch with Routledge, my publisher, and said, try to get this picture at all costs, no matter how much it costs, try to get it. Now, this isn't always as straightforward, Samita, because not every artist wants to appear on the front of someone's book, particularly if they haven't read the book. And yeah, I've been rebuffed in the past. Halle Berry refused to let her image appear on the front of one of my books a few years ago, even to the point of emailing me personally just to say she didn't want it, and or rather, I had to write to her to initiate it, I should say. And I couldn't persuade her to let me use this one image that I particularly liked. But in any case, I've learned to sort of take a back seat in these things and let the publishers um, really do the negotiations themselves and try and remove myself from what might be a conflict. But in this case, there was no conflict at all. And within a few days, Routledge got back in touch with me, said, "We've got that picture you wanted." So and I don't say this in a boastful way, but I do think it's a wonderful picture of her.
It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's flamboyant, and it addresses a lot of the cultural
Yeah,
representations
yeah, it
and
does.
also the visibility of politics that you talk about
Yeah,
in your book.
yeah.
Um, and were you thinking of Halle Berry for this cover or for your
No,
previous editions?
that was for another title a few years ago.
Okay, and who took the
I think there's
spotlight?
something. Yeah, I think that I can't remember if there's any material on Hallie. Oh, yes, there is in the one chapter. No, in previous editions, as you probably know, the first edition of this and the second both featured images of Beyonce at various stages in her progression.
Yes, I
And
noticed that. Yes.
yeah, and I also selected those myself because she cuts quite a striking image, as everyone knows. So
Yes.
I'd asked Routledge; they're pretty good in this department, to go out and seek the pictures I wanted, and they got them for me. But time for a change, and I'm not saying Beyonce's past it or anything, but there's a lot more material on Lizzo in this edition than Beyonce. So, and Lizzo is a very interesting figure, as you know.
Yes, yes. So I'm really excited for students and scholars and also journalists, to
Mm.
read the full book. So I'm not going to go through the entire book. I feel everybody needs to read this. It's such a fantastic textbook. I've read many books in the field. Um, but the way you have such simple questions, self-reflective questions for readers to come to their own conclusion is just fascinating. That's on top of all the examples, I mean, and you know you go as far as the Greek era and the Roman era. We all do, I guess. But to, have such a comprehensive textbook, um, it's so relevant, so contemporary. And what I really liked is how you touched on followers becoming influencers in
Mm,
social media,
mm.
and what it shows that, we're living a more shoppable life. And I think I'm going to quote this, many, many
Yeah.
times, when I talk to social media users.
Mm.
Um, what, how do you feel about that? I mean, what kind of
Well,
direction
I think
would you like to take?
you've struck on an interesting theme, really, which allows me to sort of trace the history of this book back, because the first edition was way back in 2006. And that resulted from a conversation that I had with my then commissioning editor at Routledge. And he spotted a gap in the market. He said, this celebrity business, it wasn't back then a fully fledged subject area. You got to understand, it was, people were interested in it, but there were no modules or degree programs at that stage. There are many, many today. And my commissioning editor, just over lunch, he said, how do you feel about trying to put together the most comprehensive analysis of the history, the development, the current state, and the effects of our fascination with celebrities? And so, how are you defining celebrities? And he said, well, not necessarily people who are in the entertainment world, but people who are appearing on TV shows. And at that stage, reality TV had really just come into its own over the
Yes,
first few
yes,
years of this century. And of course, these were new types of celebrities, because there were people who hadn't distinguished themselves in other areas, singing, dancing, and any form of entertainment, but they were entertaining. And so that offered an insight into the way we were changing, we, the fans, the followers, the audience, how our tastes and interests were changing, because we'd suddenly become mesmerized by this new genre in television, reality TV, and we were mesmerized by ordinariness. I thought, yes, this is something interesting that's happening to us. We're looking at screens for hours on end, obsessed by nothingness. These are just people who are engaged in the kind of conversation you or I or any of our viewers at the moment might engage with other people in at their local supermarkets or their gyms or at a bar, just ordinary conversations. And there were people who were simply interacting. So, in a sense, they were holding a mirror image to us. And yet, and I buy into it as well. I'm not sort of standing distantly and saying, "Oh, well, why are these pathetic people looking at reality TV?" I'm into it, and so it was left to me as an analyst of these kind of things to try to figure out why we are so interested in ordinariness, and that's the key, Samita. Ordinariness. That's where we depart from the 20th century. In the 20th century, we were obsessed, fascinated, interested, almost beyond the normal parameters of interest by people who were godlike characters. And as you know, I'm particularly interested in Elizabeth Taylor, and have written a book on her and her influence. But there are many more Hollywood stars uh, who who were so larger than life that we couldn't actually relate to them. We were engaged in a certain kind of way by looking at their images and listening to them, but they weren't ordinary. They were godlike. And the transition to what we now regard as celebrity culture came with change in orientation. When we were introduced to people who were just like ourselves, you would have thought the chances of success were so minimal as to be non-existent. I mean, if someone had come up to me in 1998 and said, "Listen, I've got a fantastic idea for a TV show. I want you to invest all your life savings, your mortgage, everything you had in a TV format." And so, what exactly have you got in mind? Then I might be interested, but you know, spell it out. Well, what we're going to do, we're just going to hire a house and we're going to put CCTV cameras around the place, and we're going to invite people in. And I might have got interested. So, who are you inviting in? Rock singers, movie stars, famous authors, supermodels? No, not quite. These are going to be just, well, people off the streets, the kind of people you might sort of bump into while you're shopping. Now, if you'd have given me that idea and said, this is a business proposition, I would have laughed in your face. And yet, Big Brother came along, and it's arguably the most spectacularly successful show in television history. And of course, only recently in the UK, ITV have relaunched Big Brother. Whether it'll be as successful this time around, I very much doubt, because I think it was of its time. But in the early 21st century, of course, it was just a sensation, a global sensation. There were variations on Big Brother around the world. So this tells us something about ourselves. And this is what we've always got to ask about celebrity culture. This isn't the celebrities we're interested in, although they are interesting, but it's us. Why are we so interested in people who resemble ourselves in all but one respect? They get more media attention. And of course, I'm guessing all of our viewers at the moment know who is the celebrity par excellence of this order. And I'm talking about Kim Kardashian, of course. You know, uh, she boasts nothing really in terms of talent, but she is talented, because talent isn't something fixed and absolute and universal and timeless. It's whatever we regard as talent. And clearly, there are several million, perhaps even billion people around the world who think that Kim Kardashian does have a special talent. And that's, I don't have a word for what that talent is, but ordinariness is the nearest I can think of.
Yeah, yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel talent is contextual.
Mm.
It's relative. But I would like to go back to the last line of my review
Yeah,
and take it from
remind
there.
me.
And so, I said, for you, the countless journalistic data that you have, the creative accounts of artists and memorable quotes are compelling in a contested history of tabloid fame. And that, of course, I believe includes, like how talent is contextual and relative. Challenging extraordinariness of talent that was once unique but still is a rare possibility. I think
Yeah,
uniqueness is something that um, you also touched on. And, when you say
yeah,
Kim Kardashian is talented, in some shape or form,
yeah.
obviously, she has established that uniqueness and she has the skill set to do that. Skills is also important. Now, how far does that demonstrate um, authenticity of a person? If we speak in terms of art, pure art, that has nothing to do with fame or money. And I do come across a
Mm.
lot of independent artists who are just doing pure art. Um, I'm just wondering how far is that, you know, talent? But then talent is also contextual and relative, I believe.
Well,
What would you say?
Yeah, the way I approach talent in the book is to say is to question it. There's this fashionable term to problematize something, to render it a problem rather
Yeah.
than taking it for granted. And I think it's a useful way to approach talent, to problematize it. What is it? Well, you can look in any dictionary around the world, and you will find basically a consensus that it is meant to be something that's inherent. We're born with it,
Yes.
and it's unique and it's special. It's an exceptional ability or capacity to be able to do something, whether it's compose great works of music or to dance or to be able to act in a way that's unsurpassable, or to be able to sing in a way that other people can't even get close to mimicking. Something very, very extreme and valuable. But another way of looking at it is to think a bit like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. So
Yes. Very well said.
if we go back a few centuries, we could take someone, and I like sports, so I'm going to make no apology for using people who are regarded as extraordinarily talented in the world of soccer. Lionel Messi, the Argentinian, Cristiano Ronaldo. Sports journalists never stop calling them genius. It's a word that they use quite liberally,
Yeah.
and they do. There's no question about it. They do have a talent. If you watch them, it's they're two wonderful, wonderfully proficient football players. Take the clock back a few hundred years, though, before football was even thought of. When I say football, I mean soccer. Uh, and you'd say, well, there's two men. They've got a ball each, and they're juggling with it, and they're kicking it around. What's so special about that?
I know. I did think about that too.
So, in the context of a game of football, it becomes a talent. And so I'm referring back to your earlier point. It is contextual in the same way that Lizzo can't get away from Lizzo. If she sings obviously, but she also plays the flute.
It's
And
the
if
whole
she play,
combination, the whole package, that
yeah,
each
it seems
artist,
almost
like Lizzo.
contradictory. It's
Yeah.
it's incongruous that she plays the flute, but it works for her.
Yes.
If she didn't sing and just played the flute, we wouldn't know who Lizzo is at the moment. Go back 200 years when flutes were a much more popular instrument, and if she's got refined skills, I don't know. I'm not. I haven't got a clue about what makes a good flautist. And an ordinary one. But she may be ordinary or she may be terrific for all I know. But, I've heard her and I just don't have the ear for that kind of thing. But the point is this, that in another era, when flutes were a popular instrument, popular as guitars are today, for example, then one might have been able to distinguish oneself as a talent. But today, you're not going to get away with it because
Yeah.
nobody really listens or is interested in flutes. They are interested in soccer players, and so we have talents that are genuinely recognized. In the movies, people say certain Hollywood stars are talented and have, in some cases, exceptional talent. Similarly, in music, and you even hear models say, "Oh, she is so talented." You look at her on the catwalk. So it's our context, the way we understand and agree what is good and what is indifferent and what is just bad. We agree what is talented. It's not something, I don't think. And you remember, I'm a sociologist, so I take this view on everything. I look outside as to our environment for the clues to practically the way the whole world works. Um, so it's easy and easy on our intellect to say that someone is talented and that's why they're exceptional. But it actually isn't on closer examination. It's what we agree between ourselves to understand to be talent. And that's basically, I think, what we've seen change over the past decade or two, our understanding of what talent is. And we go back to Kim Kardashian, but we could include every reality TV star today, and people who complain about them not having any talent. If you question them and say, well, you say they haven't got any talent, but they got something, and that otherwise people wouldn't be so interested in them. And so that idea of talent, I think, has to be. I think it's the time has come for us to redefine what talent is, and that's what I tried to do in the book. That isn't what the whole book's about, but there is one chapter on talent and reality TV, and I really do think reality TV has made a huge, colossal impact on the way everybody today thinks and feels and conducts their everyday relationships. And when I say that, of course, I'm thinking he reaches for his phone. We now conduct so much of our social life through screens, and of course, we don't just watch reality TV shows and remain interested in the people who are in the shows, but we engage with our friends or who are also looking at the show. So you've got a multidimensional experience when you watch reality TV shows. The relationship between the screen and the viewer, that has also changed quite dramatically over the past couple of decades. So all these, combined with many other factors to produce an essentially different kind of culture, which I describe as celebrity culture, of course, and so does everybody else. But
Yeah.
I just think that the people who segmentalize celebrity culture and say, oh, well, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. It's all right, for kids who are interested in celebs and they buy the tabloids and the celeb magazines and they watch reality TV. But I distance myself from those kind of things. Anybody who speaks like that hasn't quite understood the pervasiveness of celebrity. It
Yeah.
is everywhere. It saturates our politics, our religion, even military,
Yes.
our military maneuvers. Everything is affected in some way. It's not just what's on our TV screens or our movie screens or our phone screens. It's entered us. And the final chapter, I think it's either the final chapter or the penultimate chapter, I talk about how celebrity culture doesn't just surround us, but it inhabits us. It's in us, and we now have a generation of people who've been born and brought up in a culture in which celebrity is everywhere.
And I think what you do so exceptionally well is equip readers, students, scholars, researchers, and journalists, hopefully. I would really encourage anybody who is doing journalism, or even if he or she is a citizen journalist, because, many
Mm.
of us are, using social media to comment, to tweet, to post. So, in a way, many of us are citizen journalists, is to consider all the questions you have. And I feel somewhere consciously or unconsciously, people who want to seek that innate, talent or even if it's just expression. They are facing what you just said, the celebrity culture that is all dominant. And even if they say that, oh, we're not interested in celebs, how far are people equipped to resist, to negotiate, or accept for, their right reason?
Yeah.
But the aesthetics around fame, that's just, aside the politics of fame, but just the aesthetics are all around. I mean, I do see
Mm.
friends, colleagues, adapting and, using the visuals, like whether it's, just a fun red carpet walk, or, to have some luxurious gown. Um, I feel a lot of the learned behavior is coming from a celebrity culture, and this pressure to have these days, fake followers, so many um, people who claim to be activists, ethical activists, they want to be a celebrity activist. And I've commented
Mm.
so much on celebrity activism and the value of celebrity activism, or if it's just using nonverbal communication, as in ethical fashion and style that PhD candidate Kiera and Nicole and I edited, the place of aesthetics, and how to use aesthetic communication in in an ethical way. And it's obvious from Lizzo's image, her whole package,
Yeah.
that just with her colors and the fact that she's using a flute too, which is very nonverbal. Aesthetic communication is very important,
Yeah.
but
I
to it's like, how are we using it, and what are we sacrificing to you know uh conform to certain learned behaviors, like the red carpet, and the oh, I don't know, like to have all the images from celebrity
yeah.
culture.
It, if I understand you right, Samid, I think what we're looking at really is one of the themes of the book, and that is the uh, uh, the importance of um, being seen. Obviously,
Yeah,
this was first recognized in LGBTQ plus communities, for want of a better word, when they talk about the politics of representation, to be seen, to be out, uh, is a political point. It's a performance,
yeah,
and I struck upon a related point about performativity, which is also discussed in the book. And what I've tried to do is, I mean, these are very scholarly debates, and what I've tried to do is to sort of collapse them down into uh, comprehensible ways, because they're useful ideas. The way we perform isn't just theatrical; it's doing stuff. So, what gay people recognized several years ago is that if you're seen and are demonstrably gay, and you dress in a way that's almost advertising your sexual proclivities and your sexual identity, that is making an important political point, presence. Um, and I think that's quite an interesting idea. If you relate back to your previous point about celebrity politics, you came up with so many different ideas. Just by the way, I'm trying to capture them in my head and bring them all together. But being seen to be doing stuff. I mean, if you're a well-known figure in rock music, and you decide you have a political view on the conflict at the moment in Gaza, for example, and just to choose one, could be anything, could be any issue in the world, could be green politics, it could be It could be the Ukraine conflict, could be anything. It could be on fat shaming. Um, if you choose to write something on that has a certain, or give an interview on something over the phone, that has one impact. But if you're seen somewhere talking about it, then that has an altogether different kind of impact, because we live obviously in very visual times.
Yes.
And we live in visual times really because we now have a generation of people who are used to images rather than reading about something. Or I should modify that, as well as reading, because I don't think images are obviously a substitute for words. But going back to the phone idea, anywhere I go in public today, and I'm talking to you from Birmingham in England, but wherever our viewers are from on the planet, they can go outdoors and within 1 minute find somebody, or probably more likely several people, who are on their phones doing something, whether they're watching YouTube or involved in a phone conversation, or probably more than both of these things at once, or listening to music, but they're looking at something. And the phone supplies us with images. And as I say, I'm careful about saying that images are substitutes for words, but we are now habituated to a culture in which images abound. And when people are doing things, it's one thing, but when they are seen to be doing things, they're enacting a performance. And as I say, that performance has a lot more impact than just articulating your views. And I think that also has been part of the package that's been delivered to us by celebrity culture. Actually, I've got to bite my tongue. It hasn't been delivered to us because we have created it. We're all, builders of celebrity culture, every single one of us. And so we have created a world in which the image is all important. And that means that celebrities are performing for us, visually performing for us. I don't want to diss radio because I'm a great fan of radio myself, but it doesn't really have the kind of shape
Well,
shifting power
yeah, and the
that the
multimodal
visual image does.
sensory communication that digital media has. We
Yeah.
have a fantastic question here. It
Okay.
is from Kiera Obart, who is also the editor of this book, Ethical Glamour and Fashion,
Oh
a
yeah.
Styling Persona Brands.
Terrific.
So she says, Hi, and what do you make of the recent backlash against Lizzo for mistreatment of workers and abuses of power? How does this complicate her cultural capital and celebrity image? Excellent question.
It is an excellent question. It's made even more excellent by the fact that I don't have an obvious answer to it, because I think it's a wait and see situation. I, like everybody else in the world, was surprised by these accusations. And I am cynical enough to think, oh, hang on, what's the motive here? Is it money? Are they looking for a settlement or what? Because I can't believe that she would. I mean, just, we won't go through the litany of allegations, and I don't know her personally, remember, but I wouldn't have thought she was capable of this. And so I then thought to myself, well, what have they got to gain with the accusers? That is, they've lost their jobs, and maybe they're seeking some kind of vengeance, and they want to, they're looking for a cash settlement. That's still at the back of my mind. And as I say, I'm a cynic, so I think you always look for the more sinister motives. If you asked me, put me on a lie detector and said, do you think Lizzo did these things? I'd say no. I'd said these things, no again.
I would
Did she
say
act in this
so.
way?
Yeah.
I would have felt she isn't capable of it. But I, on the that's if you put me on a lie detector, which are far, far from infallible, of course. They're very fallible, as we know. Uh, so I wouldn't have thought, from what my limited knowledge of her, that she would have done and said these things. So that isn't really getting to the core of this question, though. The core of the question is it going to complicate her
Yes.
celebrity image? And I suppose, will it undermine her potency at at instigating change? Because she is a cultural agent of change. She is, I won't say in the process, but perhaps she's already transformed the way people look at size, and understand it. And, she's far from a stereotypical kind of person. She's unusual enough for people to take notice. And again, back to performativity, when she's on stage, she's doing something more than playing the flute and singing. She's doing something for people of her size, because she makes no apology whatsoever, and nor should she, of course. But she's almost poking us to say that, look at me, I'm unusual, aren't I? I'm, in previous decades, people female singers looked a lot more like Rihanna or Lady Gaga, or the aforementioned Beyonce, Ariana Grande, and I don't look like these. I look like somebody who is still as spectacularly attractive, but I don't conform. So every time she gets on stage and does stuff, and she talks about it as well, she's pushing along cultural change. So it would be dismaying for me if she was undermined at this stage. I don't think she will be. I suppose if I'm going to, if I'm going to have a bet on it, which you're asking me to, I don't think she will be damaged by this. I think she will come out with her image and her integrity intact.
Yes, um, that's a very appropriate way to address the question. I also
And I
um,
hope so.
I understand her as an artist,
Mm.
just as an artist. She is performing. And of course, in celebrity culture, what happens is that art is commodified. Now, every time, there is any damage, in media representation, it will affect the economic value of that person's artistry. And
Well,
that's also, and there's also cancel culture, so it goes,
yeah,
like it's
I'm
measured
going to
that way, but it's
interrupt
to
you,
and fro.
Samita. I'm going to
Yeah.
interrupt you there because we don't always know the extent of that damage immediately. I'm thinking of Ye,
Okay.
the artist formerly known as Kanye West, and his comments, and how Adidas cancelled his contract, and they really had to take it on the chin because their sales slumped, and they were quite unrepentant about it. And I don't know what the corporate minds at Adidas, how they were working at the time, but they obviously felt that that they must have known that he was the most valuable commodity that they had, and yet they were prepared to cancel him. Presumably they did a kind of a cost benefit calculation in their minds and thought, well, okay, we sell a lot of trainers, sneakers, as they say in the US, and a lot of his branded clothes, but is the kind of scandal that he's now courting, well, not just courting, he was in it, is in the scandal. Is that going to do more damage to the brand, the Adidas brand, that is, rather than the Ye brand, or what? So something has got to give. And I don't think we yet know the conclusion to this. We know that the sales just cratered as a result of Adidas's cancellation of Ye. But how will he fare as an artist in the future?
True. Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to know that for maybe 18 months, a couple of years. He's certainly got such a loyal following that he may ride out the storm, and emerge perhaps even stronger at the other end. But I think it's a wait and see. He's such a powerful brand in his own right, but some of the stuff that he said was just, unthinkable. Really, I mean that again was a huge surprise. But if we link the two, Samita, one of the things that we have to expect from celebs is that they will do unexpected stuff. The
And I
predictable
like your
one,
point on the brand, because I think that's something we can be mindful of. Like, what's if there's an impact, it
yeah,
is on the brand, the persona brand.
yes,
And as an
and not
artist,
the
we
person.
we don't know that part. The other point I just wanted to point out in general,
Mm,
since I got actors training in both the Los Angeles and in Mumbai, what I realized, first of all, there's no discussion of fame there. It's very much at the craft level. So, but I did realize that it is it is for a very ableist society. And
mm,
even if the art is not connected to fame, and when we're talking about cultural capital and celebrity image, that's essentially what we're talking about. And fame is, it's a complex interplay of the media, the celebrity, fans, government, businesses. Um, but just as an artist, it is partly, it's a different story because it's at the craft level. But this is something that I think it's not really talked about, and that's behind the scenes and the kind of training I got. It's very
yeah,
ableist. There's no room for neurodiversity. I'm really happy to see, different shapes and sizes. So, what is the artist really giving into? Personally, I would question the ableism. And I was also thinking this is just for any student, or journalist, reading the
mm,
book, is, are we trained to listen to our own pace, our own space? Because I think the innate talent that you earlier talked about, Illis, that, you know, it is something from the inside. Are we trained not only as performers, but also as viewers to understand? Because that art is for reception, and of course, the fame is. I feel there is lack of training and understanding of how ableist the whole industry is and what we are consuming, and of course the shoppable life that you talked about. I mean, that is just, like, it's a classic term that you have introduced, and that's for sure. So so yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of things that
yeah.
um yeah.
The shoppable life that you've just mentioned, I didn't introduce it. I mean,
Okay.
the other scholars before me have used the term shoppable life. But I like it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a very a smart way of capturing the world we live in. It's shoppable. Everything around us is shoppable, and we want it that way. And if we go back to your earlier point about training, I don't think we're being trained to do anything apart from spend money. And that's why we have a
That's true
shoppable life.
too. Yes.
And it's nobody holding a gun to our heads
Yes.
or saying you must spend money. And it isn't that we, sit in a classroom where teachers say it's a good thing to spend money. Surround yourself with consumer items that will be worthless in 12 months' time, but they will make you feel good at the moment. Teachers don't tell us that. This is something that we understand through our commerce with each other and through the media, of course. And this is what constitutes a shoppable life, that we are we have arrived at a vision of the world in which the good life, as I call it in the book,
Yes, yes.
the good is attainable to everybody. It you just doesn't matter what station you're born, high or low or in between somewhere, or how much money your parents have, or whereabouts you live in the world. We can all afford a good life, and the way we do that is buy stuff. Now, I'm not being
Yeah.
judgmental about this and saying that this is, this is another one of those devious machinations of capitalism as it's entered its latest phase. That is one perspective, and I'm not dismissing it, because that we do live in a capitalist economy. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. There is some form of very few countries in the world where there is not a semblance of capitalism, but there are, as you point out, whole industries and support systems that keep these things going. And we one of the arguments of the book is that to keep us buying stuff, it used to be relatively easy in the 20th century. You advertised it. And then we looked at our TVs and thought, or read our papers and magazines, and we see the ads and think, oh, this is quite good. We'll go and buy this, whether it's toothpaste or a new car, or find a new insurance company. We listen and learn from advertisements. And eventually, though, in the 21st century, we've got exhausted. It's almost like we are experiencing advertising fatigue. We don't take so much notice of them now. I think I'm not just talking about my generation, I'm talking about everybody. I've lived through, I'm old enough not to be able to remember a world without television. And my late mother used to say, she said that the only way she could get a nap in the afternoon was to sit me in front of the TV watching BBC television for an hour or two while she went to sleep for a while. So I was kind of brought up on it. Anyway, I'm getting a lot. We're not interested in my childhood, but the point is that what celebrity culture has brought is an interesting development in the way advertising is conducted. That's through people. The people themselves are living advertisements. I mentioned the artist formerly known as Kanye West a few moments ago, and Adidas capitalized on that perfectly. I mean, in a sense, he was the personification of Adidas for a while, until his cancellation, of course. And it was, and so wherever he went, there was a kind of a moving advertisement for Adidas. And I think that's what celebs have become, except they not only advertise particular products or brands, whether they be, Nespresso coffee makers or Buick cars or whatever. They not only do that, but they're advertising a shoppable world. There are living reminders. Again, back to this idea that when they appear, they're performing something. And what they're performing, doing, not just theatrically, but doing something, they are reminding us that the world is good if we surround ourselves with commodities. And so we are inclined to think that that's what we aspire to. We aspire to owning lots of things, not necessarily for a long time, because they self-obsolesce. In other words, they lose their glamour after a few months or
It's
years. We have to replace
replaceable.
them with a
Yeah.
newer version, like novelty. So the people, the celebrities that we idolize and follow, are actually living advertisements. Again, not only for the particular products that they are contracted to advertise, but for a world in which those products have meaning. They bring us gratification and happiness
And
or
all
good luck.
the yeah, and all the followers who are turning into influencers, and projecting an image of a celebrity, or a persona in celebrity culture.
Yeah.
They're also demonstrating a transactional relation. It's like your book points out very well. um, and so
Well, it's
a lot.
transactional in the sense that it's not just one way. We're not. I write about a very influential journalist called Vance Packard, who wrote in the 50s and 60s. And he's often dismissed by scholars. They say, oh, well, it's journalistic, it's quite superficial, but it's actually quite brilliant, in my opinion. His book called The Hidden Persuaders kind of issued a warning about the advertising industry. And what it was saying is that this advertising stuff, don't dismiss it. You think it's creeping up on you, but it's getting into your heads, and you will be changed as a result of it. So it was a kind of a warning about the sinister consequence, sinister as he saw them, at least, consequences of advertising. But advertising has become much more sophisticated and more fluid since those days. And he was talking, Packard was writing rather, about us as the recipients of advertising. He's talking about the advertising industry, but that transaction that you just talked about wasn't actually happening back then. It was a one-way thing. Advertisers advertised to us, and then we went out and spent money. Nowadays, that transaction that you talk about is between us all. We're doing it between ourselves.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That's what I
yeah,
was
I know.
thinking
And I
about.
think it's an important point that you've made that, I go to my gym in the morning and I see someone who's got new footwear and it catches my eye. And I say, what are you wearing there? Let me take a closer look. And people do that all the time at gyms. I mean, that's just, footwear. It could be anything. It could be in a shop.
Anywhere. I
It could be
mean,
anything.
I
And
yeah.
the advertising is being done by ourselves in our daily transactions with each other. So we're in on it. We're not
I know.
just
Yesterday
happy
I did
recipients.
window
We're doing
shopping.
it.
I just did window shopping, and I do have an eye for, okay, is there any new style out there? I haven't bought anything for a very long time, but even window shopping,
Nor have
it
I.
is available.
Yesterday,
I did not. I did window shopping
it's been
yesterday.
24 hours since I bought anything. So
No, I'm more I'm I am very supportive of this book. It's one of our books. But essentially, what I do practice is what also the book advocates for is slow fashion. So I am
what fashion?
unapologetically onto slow fashion and
Slow
retro
fashion.
fashion and conscious closet. Just, less usage of stuff. And also, like, all the memories that a lot of the old clothes or any item we use, it could be like
Yeah.
an old watch. Like, this is my mom's old watch, and the watch
Okay.
is not even working, but it's more of an accessory. But more than that, it's a memory. It's a
Mm.
living memory. And even if some of our loved ones have passed on, and today is my parents' 51st wedding anniversary in heaven, but I get to celebrate that in very minimalist ways. So wearing her watch, or also the necklace that she gave me. This is from my first birthday. So
Unfortunately, I have
it's the
nothing from parents left me.
it's
Otherwise, I
it's a
tried to
living
cling on
memory.
to a watch that my dad left, but it broke. Couldn't get it fixed.
It doesn't matter. Yes.
I'm ripping words away, but they are relevant.
Alice, sorry. The I think the microphone on your end, I think there's static there.
Maybe
Can
I'm
we do a
shouting.
sound check?
Maybe I've moved it. How are we doing now?
The static is still coming.
Okay. Well, maybe our line's breaking up or something. I don't think I can do
I'm so
much about
nervous
that,
about
Sunita.
the speakers. I have a lapel mic um, for industry use, but I'm
Okay.
scared to use it. So right now, yeah, I think I hear you better. Can you say a few words, Ellis?
I'm still with you.
Okay, no, I hear you well.
Okay.
Kira says, I love the idea of living memories in our objects. This is something celebrity culture doesn't necessarily teach us, but this is one of the wonderful things to, remember. Also, we have another member from CMCS, Diana Miller.
Okay.
Living memory in my poetry is a tribute to my parents who are passed away. Now it's interesting, like, celebrity culture essentially signifies immortality. I mean, it's something that, you know, so many people want to establish immortality, that continuity of life.
Yeah.
But how do we, I think I'm always asking myself, writers, poets,
Mm.
actors, dancers, when they face the kind of celebrity culture that, you have so beautifully demonstrated, how can they restore um, that innate expression, that they're in quest of? And to have that immortality. Of course, we're talking right now, and you know, we do have some loved ones in mind. Um,
Well, if you think about it, uh, we, people do it every day of the week, every hour, every second, very likely, and they do it with with the phones again. And
yes,
again, this is, I made the point earlier about the way we engage with our phones all the time. One of the purposes that they now have is that they are storage devices for memories, as you say, because people are doing selfies as I say, every second. That and that if they're not doing selfies, you see people doing this. That they're taking photos or videos. So we're storing these things all the time, and they're all memories. I have no idea what people do with them, whether they delete them immediately, but I'm suspecting they don't. And this is something that I don't do, by the way. So I have no insight into this except my observations. And but I know if I go for a trip with a few friends, that it's not long before someone gets the phone out and says, "This is what Look at so and so. This is me with, and here I am in whatever year." So I think that the phones have kind of become a repository of memories now, and will continue that way.
one of our members, Andrea Marshall, and she published one of her. Actually, she was one of the editors of our books.
Yeah,
She said something beautiful about the devices, and she said it's an empathetic device.
an
So
empathetic device.
empathetic device, and
Is she around to explain that concept?
I didn't ask her to define, but it was in, well, I know the context in which she mentioned, and one of our panelists and member, he passed away. His name was Josh, and he passed away. But we were, you know, not only grieving, but we were also celebrating his memory,
Mm,
and it was through the phone,
mm.
and it
Well,
was
we do, yeah.
and the question of
And
immortality.
I
was
wrote
so
a book a few years ago about, and the title of it is Screen Society. And because this wasn't just about celebrities or celebrity culture at all, but it was about the way in which society had changed to the point where our interactions with each other, conventional sociology uh, uh, treats interactions as face to face interactions.
yes,
And the argument in the book was that it's time we abandon this and said that there is a new form of social interaction, and that's through phones. And of course, a lot of scholars hate phones, and at universities, some professors don't allow them in the lecture theatre, and forbid the students use them completely, like King Canute trying to order back the waves. This is not going to work. Phones are part of our lived experience now. Everybody's. And if
yes.
you don't have a phone, you're pretty odd. I hope I'm not insulting any of our. In fact, I'm pretty confident I won't be insulting any of our viewers at the moment. The point is that so much of our daily lives is conducted through interaction on the phone. It's not always one-way interaction. It, but often it's three, four, five, multiple vectors of communication happening all at once on our phone. And I can't do it as well as the younger people at my gym who are just absolutely phenomenal. The way they interact all the time. But the point about the central, I don't want to dignify the book too much and say that the thesis of the book, but the overall argument of the book was that we have seen a transformation in the way we live, and the screen has been integral to that. We live so much of our lives through screens now, and I know a lot of old timers. Just I say old timers; they're not necessarily old in age. They're intellectually old, I think, though, because they haven't quite understood just how dynamic screens are and how they have opened up a new dimension to social life. And I sound a huge enthusiast. I'm not necessarily enthusiastic. I just believe that analytically, that is what's happening. My analysis suggests that more and more of us are using screens all the time, and that is not going to stop.
And it's the intimacy that is, that it is establishing a
Yeah,
pseudo
It's
intimacy.
it's a new
It
kind of
is,
intimacy.
it is
Intimacy is distance.
yeah, intimacy and the distance at the same time. But
Exactly.
a lot of times, when I'm in a self-reflective mode, I realize that, okay, it's not just about who's saying what or posting what. Like, even if I post, I actually try to understand through imagination that what is the other person thinking, what might be the other person thinking about this particular post. So maybe I posted
Well, that's
once.
what she means by empathetic.
I probably made a post once, maybe the viewer has seen once, but I am thinking probably 5 times, what is the other person understanding, what
Of
is
course, we all do that.
the
That's
perceptual thing. And it reminds me of your book again, like when fans, they understand celebrities, it's not just the media representation. Traditionally we have been trained to understand, okay, it's a media representation, but it's more than that. It's their fantasy of
yeah.
what he or she is on the screen. So it's interesting. It's very much at the perceptual level. And
Yeah.
also, like you said earlier, I think you said earlier that he or she is also thinking about him or herself.
Uh,
So I think you mentioned, but if you didn't, if you have any thoughts on that, that would be interesting, because I think it's ultimately about ourselves a lot of times. Even if we are, let's say, in celebrity culture, if we are, you know, watching, reading about a celebrity, it's not just about him or her. A lot of it is about us. And how do we identify, and the pleasures of that identification, and where to catch ourselves.
yeah.
Um,
Some of our, I imagine quite a few of our viewers have seen, I guess it's quite an old movie now, 20 years old or more, Bend It Like Beckham. And the central character in that is a girl named Jess. And she goes home at night and she has a poster of David Beckham on her wall. And she finds that she can't talk to her relatives or even her friends about intimate subject matter. And she can't empathize with them, while we're using this term empathy and empathetic.
yes, yeah,
She can't empathize and they can't empathize with her. But with Beckham, she can.
wow,
And she only has a poster there. So she actually isn't empathizing with him and he isn't empathizing with her.
yeah,
But she can pour out her heart to this poster with an image of Beckham. And I think that might be, I mean, that isn't addressing exactly what you're talking about, but I think it's pretty close,
yeah,
that we have these one-way relationships with celebrities, and the reason why we're able to have them, and the reason why they're meaningful to us, they're not abstract, they are meaningful, is because, as you said earlier, we use fantasy. We can construct relationships in our imagination. So these are independent of time and space because they're going on in our heads. And I think a lot of celebrity culture is about that kind of imagination. The celebrities that we refer to when we write and talk and discuss celebrity culture are not the people, not the flesh and blood creatures that live and die like the rest of us. They're products of our imaginations. We construct the celebrities in our minds and then orient ourselves towards them. So Kim Kardashian may send out tweets or use what she uses, no end of social media. So we think we have, a direct contact with Kim, but we actually don't. That doesn't spoil it though, because we think we do, we feel we do. And somehow, without trying, or perhaps without doing anything, Kim Kardashian we are engaging with her in the same way as Jess engaged with a poster of David Beckham, two
and quite
dimensional.
likely, Kim Kardashian is not running that account. It's a social media manager. And I know social media managers who run other artists' account. I mean, it's, you need that, help basically. So when I see a lot of friends, they are nonstop liking a star doesn't even know, it's
Yeah, yeah,
the
but
social media
Smita,
manager.
give them more credit. You know that. I know that. They know it. They're not being duped. They're not being fooled into thinking this is really Kim, They know. They're savvy enough to realize that this is a managed account or managed several accounts.
That's a good point. They're not
But
cultural
that doesn't
leaders.
render it meaningless, though.
It's what
From the
what's
fans' point,
meaningful
the
for them.
audience's point of view, they still take meaning from that. That is rewarding to them to have this kind of link, however tenuous that link may be, to Kim Kardashian. And I won't mention this film again, blimey, I'm doing good box office if people want to rent, if people want to watch the movie on the Netflix or something now. Uh, the Bend It Like Beckham, she wasn't thinking. She looks at the wall and thinks, "Is that really David Beckham?" She's not an idiot. She knows it's a poster, but somehow she's able to empathize and believe that this is, to use a term that you used earlier, a transactional relationship. It's going two ways, even though in her head she knows it isn't. The rational part of her brain is telling you this is just a poster, but she's still empathizing in that way. And it's a fantastic trick that we play on ourselves in this sense, and we're all doing it. And the moment we stop doing it, celebrity culture just collapses, along with a lot of other things as
True,
well.
we're talking about it right now.
Mhm.
Diana says the celebrity work is all about relevance to humanity as a whole. What experiences resonate with everyone and why they resonate is an important documentation of the issues we all face.
Well, I'm
Uh,
glad she thinks so.
Pardon me?
I'm glad she thinks so. Otherwise, if she didn't think that, there wouldn't have been any point in writing this book. But
True, true. And you mentioned the good life too. Do you remember which chapter or which page you mentioned that?
well, it's a kind of a running theme.
Okay.
I think I first bring it up in chapter 2. I think I don't have the book in front of
Okay.
me,
Oh,
so
okay. So,
no,
no, it's good. It's a running theme, and one of my friends, he's a art philosopher. He's a philosophy faculty in New York. He talks about the good life quite a bit. I could share,
yeah,
his video channel, and he does excellent videos on philosophy and ethics for the wider public. So very
yeah,
much public sociology, and he talks about that good life, and in different, areas of practice.
yeah.
And it's very interesting, to restore values, ultimately
Well, the
values.
idea comes from the way I use it is from a scholar I greatly admire. Is not with us nowadays, of course, Christopher Lash. But I think he got the term from Plato or Aristotle. I think how to live a good
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah.
So this is defined, not it's an ancient idea. But of course, all of us are looking in some way to try to live a good life. It just so happens that this changes through time and place. And at the moment, we have a particular conception of a good life and how we should live it. And it isn't a spiritual life. It's very much a material one. And,
Yes.
and some people find that appalling that I would, arrive at that conclusion. But as I say, I'm an analyst, so I write about the world as it is, not particularly how I'd like it to be. And my other half, she is an extremely spiritual person, and we've learned to live like yin and yang. She has all the spiritual stuff going on. Um, I don't. I'm a very hard nosed pragmatist, and as I said earlier, quite cynical about the world. But somehow it kind of works, together somehow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do think we live in. I won't say a world in which the spiritual has been stripped out. I think it has to a large part, but not completely. But I do think we live in an age where the spiritual aspects of life are less now than they probably ever have been in history.
Yes, and we're talking about material culture and material practices. I mean,
We just
we
like
are
buying stuff, don't
we
we?
are buying, yeah.
Mm.
We are like earthly human,
Yeah.
material
And that
people,
means going around the shops, or
and then
shopping
go to the
online. And
shops.
I do it, you do it, all of our viewers at the moment do it, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and of course, what symbolizes, I do find, and this is a good point about, the current social media that we have, the kind of content that is being curated. I mean, not all the content is going back to the history of reality television, which you earlier pointed out today, and now with social media, I mean, we see, you know um, what kind of shoppable life we have and transactional relations, and what we get people to buy into. When I say we, it's more of a generic we. But at the same time, this technology has also made possible of curation of other content, like a lot of nature, for example. And I think that's where the spirituality is also being challenged. There is availability of a lot of nature, and it's because of technology we can access that nature. And I believe a lot of celebrities are also, like if they need a break, they go for a nature hike, or they check it out on YouTube. Beautiful nature out there. You know, it's a great guide, but what kind of learned behavior are we carrying, and what do we choose to consume?
That's a
So
question,
that's that's a
or just
question
throwing it
for
out there.
everybody. It's a self-reflective question. Um,
Well, that's one that I'm not going to answer in
No,
any.
it's just the one to think about.
Okay,
This is for
okay. We'll
each.
think about that one for the future then, shall we? And shall we have a return match sometime in the near future and talk about these things and maybe ask our r- viewers
Our
and
and panelists. Yes, I
panelists to store some questions up for me, and I'll try and answer them next time. And I'm
yes.
being abrupt at the moment, and I'll tell you why. One of the popular celeb shows in the UK at the moment, it has been for several years, is Strictly, which is the kind of UK equivalent of Dancing with the Stars. And I would be failing in my celeb watching duties if I missed tonight's show.
Oh
And
no, and that's
started.
totally understandable. And um,
I'm
but
not kidding.
yes,
I do watch it.
I would watch it just for the talent, and I'm a dancer myself,
I
and
like it.
yeah. So like this is a dance film.
Okay.
But yeah, I do independent film work.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, just for the talent, regardless of the genre. So I'll let you watch that. And I just
Thank
wanted to
you.
say the journey of the book is long, and I'm looking forward to more conversations. We do
Okay.
have some panelists who would love to have a panel together in 2024. So
Okay.
your book is officially, it has released, but I
Thanks.
also assume in 2024 it's going to be more available, because the book says 2024.
Publishers often do that because they like to. It's actually out there. It's been published, but they put next year's date on it so that it doesn't look old in 3 months' time.
And
So
yeah, and
there's a lot of
2024 is around the corner,
yeah.
and would be wonderful
So
to have.
hopefully it won't be out of date next year.
No, 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 no. The book is a vision. I believe it's for many visionaries. You raise excellent questions, many directions, and a lot of the questions I was personally raising, it's more self-reflective. It's something to equip ourselves with in our individual context, um, and yes, also to engage the wider community, because your book
Well, I'm glad you
uniquely
enjoyed it.
has that potential.
Thank you very much.
So have a wonderful
Thank you.
wonderful evening.
Evening's viewing
Yeah, evening
strictly
for us.
strictly followed by rugby is my television tonight,
A wonderful
and a bottle
day
of
to
wine.
all,
I won't drink the whole bottle.
on the other side of the Atlantic, and a wonderful Sunday ahead too. Thank you,
Thank you.
Kiera and Diana, for all the excellent comments and
And
reflections.
we'll be
And
talking to them again in the new year.
yes, we'll be back in the new year.
Okay.
See you
See you
next time.
soon. Thank you for
Thank
your
you for
questions.
joining us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.